Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me today. This is an hour-long webinar. We're going to cover analytics readiness. Well, when you have a lot of data, you have to refine the data to make sense out of it. So basically, that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's get into it. Insights through analytics. Why is analytics so important? Because a large amount of data just sitting there will not yield answers on its own. Basically, that's why we need analytics. All kinds of analytics, actually. And then we're going to talk about how we're going to make the most of the data that you have by refining them and dissecting them, basically getting ready for analytics to get to have answers to your questions faster. So before we do all that, let's start with a very fundamental. What is one-to-one marketing all about? Now, why is that important as well? It is important because, like it or not, all channels are turning into one-to-one channels, and the marketers are losing control over it fast. Customers or recipients of your messages, they can turn off the faucet anytime they want. They can opt out, block you, or whatever it is, they're in control. Let's just not forget that first. And so that, how do we not become cut off? Well, we have to stay relevant. You have to show the offers and products that are relevant to them, that could be interesting to them. It's not about what you try to push. So that's what one-to-one marketing is all about. And it's not just about traditional one-to-one channel. It's about every channel now. Because even TV can be traceable. It's practically turning into a one-to-one channel. Now, marketers must know who to contact. You cannot just talk to everybody just because you have some names, or yeah, sure, we have a few million opt-in names, so I'm going to talk to everybody all the time. It doesn't work like that. Number two, if you decided that you really want to talk to somebody, then do you know what to say? Do you know what to offer? What should be the featured product? Through what channel? All those things are, well, it's being done in the name of personalization, but basically that's what this is all about. Let's not forget that we're not in control of the medium, and we have to be relevant to them all the time. So what is the goal? Actually, if you want me to summarize the whole goal, you have to personalize your message to everybody, every chance that you have, through every channel. That's the ultimate goal. To do that, you have to use tremendous amount of data, and the raw data will not cut it. You have to clean the data as much as possible so you can do these things fast. So let's start with that. Number two, you cannot just do things. You gotta set up the goal first. And any complex project should start with a really well-defined problem statement. Let's start there. Ask the right question first and decide what kind of questions do we want to be answered using all this data that we have. Is that about expanding your customer base? Is that about increasing customer value? Is that about cross-sell, upsell? Is that about churn prevention? Is that about win back? Whatever it is, you have to ask that question first. Or it could be, it's not always about the customers. It could be about what would be the most interesting product next season. Or let's study some seasonality of things. All those things come with the problem statement. Once you define that, then you have to look for data that could answer such questions. I call it data discovery. And in that phase, you may find out that, wow, we have a lot of data. I mean, in the name of big data, we collected a lot of data, but they're not in good shape. So you have to go through some data transformation. Once you go through that, then you're ready for analytics. The data transformation is exactly what we're going to talk about today, but that's about how to get the data ready for advanced analytics. Now, just because the modeling and all these analytical reports are done doesn't mean that it's done there. There's a step number 5, which is share the knowledge with all organizational departments. And you have to apply such knowledge to campaigns, your business decisions, and all that. So number 6 would be your more targeted campaign, more personalized campaign, could be those things. And is that the end of it? No. If you did something, you have to figure out if it worked. If it worked in the name of back-end analysis or post-campaign analysis, however you want to call it, I call it impact analysis, all mean the same thing. And also, if something worked, do you know what worked? What element was the element of success, basically? Is that about selecting the right name? How'd you do it? Did you build a model? Did you just make up rules? What rule worked the best? Did you offer different things? Did you have multiple creatives? All those things are part of what worked. So if you don't collect the data in terms of what you did as well as what the customer did, you will not know what happened. Now, if you did that, then it will pose new questions, basically. Yeah, because we did the A/B testing and A worked and B didn't work. Why did it not work? Let's ask a new question. And so this whole data roadmap is a big circle. You keep learning. It's an endless circle of learning, basically. But as you do that, you get better. So that's the whole cycle. So let's not think the whole data play is just one static thing that, I'm going to dump a lot of data to some analysts and hope to God that they'll find something that's useful. No, from the top down, and everybody in your organization should think like this. What problems are we solving? Let's ask that question first. By the way, in the future, when the AI becomes really smart, it's not that smart yet, by the way, people who will not be replaced by AI are the kind of people who give purposes to those AIs. We have to be the ones who give assignments to the machines. Otherwise, we're going to be replaced by machine fast. Even those folks who are engaged in advanced analytics and modeling, down the line, it will be replaced by a machine anyway, because they're going to do faster and better, of course. Now, so how do we not be replaced? You have to continue to ask the right questions. Because the machines, no matter how smart they are, they don't know what to do, basically. You have to tell them what to do. And that beginning part of it is the stating the problem statement, basically. Now, pillars of data and analytics. The data play is not that simple because it's made of a lot of different parts. Traditionally, since the age of what we call big data, tremendous amount of money and resources went into data collection. The whole world of big data was invented for that reason. Every move you make and all the things that you do, it's all collected. Fine, so it can support some basic reporting. And we can retrieve the data really fast. And people brag about, we can retrieve a transaction history that happened 20 years ago within 0.5 seconds. Great, that's impressive. And you can show what's going on in terms of click-through rate and all the trends and whatnot on a basic dashboard. So that's what I call part of collection stage. But is at the end of it? No. Another area where a lot of organizations spend a lot of time and effort is the delivery part. It could be things like campaign management tool, campaign automation, or if it's about intelligence, it could be some automated report, dashboard, BI reporting, all that kind of stuff. And a lot of companies make tools like that, and they claim that, just give us the data, we'll make any answer possible. We'll answer any questions. But is that true? A lot of times it yields very disappointing results, or even if they yield the good answers, it takes too long. Now, why does it take too long? It's because the data is not refined. So basically, the refinement stage is very important, and that's the most neglected or ignored process of all. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. How do we make the data clean and ready so that the whole analytics process gains momentum, basically? So what is refinement? You have to clean the data. Most data that we see these days are not organized, not structured, or not categorized. Basically dirty, unrefined oil, basically. So you have to clean them up, and there are a lot of commercial solutions for that. But the bottom line is that you have to do it. Standardization too. I've seen a lot of product taxonomies in my lifetime. Hardly anyone is ready for advanced analytics from day one. Maybe they're optimized for product inventory management, but not for targeting and personalization. Not really. Sometimes they're lucky. It could just happen, but no, you have to do some work to make it work for marketing. Data consolidation and summarization is also important because a lot of channel activity that a lot of people go through. We collect the data based on channels. We have a call center data, we have a POS data, we have a web data, all kinds of data. You have to put it all together. So that becomes an issue. You have to do that. Otherwise, yeah, the data is there, but they're all in silos and they're not talking to each other. And that could cause a lot of issues. Even if you have a state-of-the-art campaign management tool, imagine that you have no idea what other campaigns the recipient received. You only know what happened in your own channel. That's not good. Again, this is a customer-centric world. They can opt out anytime. If you don't want to bore them to death or push them to opt out, you have to be really sensitive about it, and you have to be consolidating the data around that person. And of course, to do all this, you have to get the answers out of all this data. So I put modeling and analytics as part of data refinement. Because what is the data play? Ultimate data play is to converting the large amount of data into answers to your questions. That's data refinement. Now, before you do that, let's talk about analytics. If people say, yeah, analytics, we're engaging in analytics. What kind of analytics we're talking about? Well, this is not even all inclusive, by the way. But from the very basic BI reporting and dashboard, all the way to optimization and predictive modeling, you can think of a whole lot of things that we can do. Bottom line, all of these things require clean data. If you don't clean the data, what ends up happening is that you're going to spend 80-90% of the time cleaning the data, merge the data, procure the data. That's all you do. And then you spend last 10%, 10 minutes really, to do the modeling and all these other things. Especially when you get into the predictive business. And by the way, this is an essential element of personalization. That what is the propensity of that person? What is the lifetime value of that person? What is the product affinity of that person? What is the churn prediction? Why is he going to leave? What if he's vulnerable? That type of things. Well, things slow down to a halt if your data is not clean. I'm sure a lot of people have talked about data lake and whatnot. Why is a data lake popular? Because big data was too big. So they go like, let's just pick some of the things that we need essentially for these things and put them in the lake. But here's what I say about data lake. The lake water is still not drinkable. If you drink it, you're going to get sick. And this is what happens. Just because you're smaller doesn't mean that they're cleaner. You have to refine the whole thing. Let's talk about all that in the context of marketing. Now, in marketing, I don't care what kind of business you are in or any industry. Basically, B2B, B2C, it doesn't matter. We're in a business of, yes, let's get more customers. That's acquisition. Why? Because depending on your business, about, 70 to 80% of your customers are one-time buyers. They will not come back to you. They just try you out, they're not coming back. Now, if your name is Amazon, that's a different story. But the point is that not everybody else is Amazon. So you have to acquire new customers constantly. So the questions that you ask and the data sources that you touch are very different. These are the names that you do not have in your database, basically. I don't even have them yet because you're not your customers. Now, let's talk about the 2, 3, and 4 here. These are the kind of questions that we all ask. Okay, so they just bought a TV. What else can I sell? Yeah, let's sell a soundbar. That would be cross-sell, upsell, right? What would be the customer value, future value? Who's a valuable customer? How do you even define the value? All those questions come up. Just the sheer dollars, recent buyers, high average spending. It could be whatever. But the bottom line is your data set should support any assumption they could ever come up, whether it be about recency or the frequency average or the total or past 24 months or 48 months or life to date, doesn't matter. That kind of answer should come out in 0.1 second, not 2 days. I've seen cases where you need like 3 days to do these things, by the way. And then, by the way, the relationship is there. So then what do? You want to elongate your relationship for as long as possible. That means you have to know who's vulnerable. What if you're valuable and vulnerable? This is one of the terms that my mentor invented, and I still use it. Well, to get to them first. Yeah, they used to be valuable, but they're not coming. Their cadence score is horrible. What happens there? Let's do that. So the question that you ask is quite different. But if they still left, you want to win them back, so you're going to have to do some reactivation program there. Now that's a combination of the third-party data and all your CDP information, even if the transactions are very old because they didn't come back, but at least you know that what they're interested in. Let's do all these things. So I wanted to share the steps because we have to think about in steps because the data that you use and data that you employ are very different for each step. Not only that, I only put down some basic questions, but the kind of things that analysts do are this complex. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but here's another thing. You must have seen a lot of pyramid type of analytics schema where it says, yeah, sure, predictive analytics is on top and all the basic BI is at the bottom. The answer is no, not really. There's no hierarchy to that. Yeah, it's more complex if you move to the top, but it's like saying, you're an emergency room doctor and somebody just came into the emergency room because he got into an accident. Now, he may be diabetic, but is that your first concern? No, you may have to conduct the most complex surgery ever because you're in an emergency situation. So this analytics stack, I call it, should be applied at all point. Sometimes you want to know what your customer base look like. Sometimes you want to describe who they are and segment them. Sometimes you want to build models to know their future value, to know your present value, actually, to know their product affinity so that you sell most appropriate things to them, and the spending estimation, or even the personas, like are they bargain seekers? Are they a cutting edge technology buyer, early adopter, that type of things? You need a lot of models to do all those things. I call them personas, by the way. So to do these things, and by the way, forecasting, optimization, attribution, these are typically agency type of analytics. But the bottom line is, there's no hierarchy in all these things. These are just the menus of things we can do. The bottom line, if you don't have the gray part ready at the bottom, analytics sandbox, I call it, or analytics ready data environment, it doesn't matter what your doctor prescribed, it will take a very long time to get it done. Once you have the clean data, building a model could be a cinch, by the way. In fact, that could be faster than designing a complex data at the BI stage. So the point that I'm making is this. There's no hierarchy in all these things. Just look at this as a counter behind the desk in a pharmacy. And these are the available medicine that you could take. The bottom line is that the doctor can prescribe anything depending on where you are or depending on what your challenges are. Because what did I say in the beginning? You gotta do these things in an order where you have to know what problems you are solving. You gotta come up with a problem statement first. And to do all these answers fast, you need analytics ready environment. So sorry for the long introduction, but basically that's why you need this analytics ready environment. So let's get to the bottom of it. So what does your database support? This is a really important question. Well, it could be about order fulfillment. Maybe you do 90% of your business online. The fulfillment is very important. What did they order? What SKU number? And did they pay or did not pay? Is that a subscription program or not? All that. Contact management, sure, you have to have some PII to deliver the goods to the right person, yes. And if they come back, you have to know who they are, right? And all the reporting, dashboarding, ad hoc reporting, campaign execution, yeah, this is something like a Salesforce or whatever that you use for email campaign and whatnot. Then yes, of course, that requires data, right? So you have all these things, but the question that I have is that, is it optimized for advanced analytics? Is it? How do you know? Well, if your modeler is struggling to get things done on time, that's a dead giveaway. So let's talk about what modeling is actually. It doesn't matter what kind of modeling you're building. Basically, modeling is about ranking. If it's about product offering, you're ranking products for that person at that moment. When I have 0.1 second to offer something to somebody who's at the doorstep or at the website, how are you going to rank all those things? And, well, you know what? I'm going to show him the iPhone case because I know that he just bought an iPhone type of thing. So it's a ranking. You have a choice of thousands of products. You have to pick one, right? Or one or two, maybe. But the point is about ranking. What if you're planning a campaign? It could be a household, it could be individual, it could be email. Or it could be companies if you're in B2B. You have some chance to talk to some people who should I pick? It's all about ranking, isn't it? If I give you a spreadsheet of like 1,000 companies, if you're a salesperson selling B2B, and I say, you know what, I'll give you 1,000 names, and there's no other way to rank them, what are you going to do? You're going to call everybody, and it will take a long time to call everybody. But if there's a way to rank those 1,000 names, and I'm one salesperson, maybe it's the company size, maybe it's the past purchase history, maybe somebody built a lead score for me, and all I have to do is to sort the whole thing by descending order of the lead score and call the highest score person first. Isn't that great? So that would be ranking, right? So the question that I have is this: what if that spreadsheet that I just gave you is not even on an individual or company level? What if I just dumped you every purchase history that there is and just gave you, and you go like, wait a minute, if somebody bought like 5 times, I see that guy 5 times. I cannot rank these things. Can somebody please summarize the whole thing so that I can have one score, at least one number for that company that, yeah, total life to date sales volume for that company is XYZ. Then I can rank those things, right? So that's exactly why you have to restructure the data if you're in a business of ranking. And the data shape that you have to be in is exactly the kind of a thing that you want to rank. If you want to rank the product, it should be organized around the product. If you want to rank your prospects or the customers, then it should be on an individual or household level. So I talked enough about why you have to clean first, but I just want to emphasize this number, that 80% of the modeling development goes into the prep work. That is such a golden rule. Well, many times I go to an analytics conference, nobody disputes it. In fact, maybe somebody says, hey, you know what, I spend 90% of my time cleaning the data. What is the goal as an organization? And this is what I did in my startup days. We cut that down to zero data prep time. And the result was with about 12 to 15 analysts, we used to build 70 to 100 models a day, score all of them overnight with the computers from 20 years ago. That's the power of organization. So bottom line, yes, you can aspire to cut that 80% to zero, and that's what we're going to talk about. So let's talk about first challenge. First challenge is that, yeah, in this multi-channel environment, data are coming from everywhere. Some people may do more business in a call center versus web, and you get some data from Magento or whatever the system that you do the web business and all that. It could be good old CRM system, by the way. It could be POS. You still have stores. And I have a lot of clients who do both. Yeah, they just sell through the website, we sell through all kind of stores, or maybe you made an alliance with a partner store, whatever it is, but that's like in person. And of course, you do a lot of social media, and people express their opinions. And then, of course, you know the click data from all that ad that you put on social media. The same goes to email, all that. The bottom line is this. This is what we call customer-centric view, or we call it a single view of a customer. Or these days, we call it 360 view of a customer. It's all the same thing, basically. And then why is this human head important? Because we want to get out of the channel-centric mindset. The bad way of doing things is that, you know what, I'm in charge of email, so I don't care how many other things that they have seen. All I care is that I want to successfully deploy 200,000 emails like this week. And if the click-through rate and some conversion rate is acceptable, that's my job. Yeah, for that manager, that you could say that, but no, if you flip it, no, I'm not a channel guy. Just because I didn't uncheck the box somewhere there, you know, I don't mind getting some emails from you, does not mean that I'm an email person. What do I do when I buy things? Let's say that I get a catalog for, say, some sound system. Great. And what do I do when I see it? My interest is going up, right? Well, I could have gotten the email, it's the same thing. Then what do I do? Oh, this Sandbox sounds really good. And so what do? I'm going to do some Google search. As a result of Google search, I studied a lot about them. And then now I'm deciding, where am I going to buy this thing? Am I going to the manufacturer's website? Am I going to the Amazon? Or you know what, I want some instant gratification, so I'm going to go to the store today. I'm going to go to a mall today, or whatever it is. Bottom line, you're not a channel person. The first rule they have to remember, and as a data player, is that nobody is an email or banner or social media person. Everybody's everybody. So that means you have to get out of that block. And what that means is that all these data from different places should be in one place with an equal amount of importance. Basically, that's where we're getting at. Now, let's talk about the steps. Steps through which you gotta get to that place. Now, the green part on the right-hand side is what we normally call analytics. You run some report, you may build models. And by the way, when I say models, it could be human building models, or it could be the AI building models. It doesn't matter. It's basically models. What is a model? You you use all kinds of data that you have, and you assign the score. It could be call it a probability, depending on what you're trying to do. That, you know what, I don't know for sure, but this guy is 80% likely to be an early adopter of technology, or something like that. Now, I just said a simple word, but that model or the algorithm may use 10, 20, 30 different variables in it. Trouble with the situation like that is, hey, you may have 1,000 variables in your database. Why that 20 variables, you know? The bottom line is somebody has to do these things to get to that answer, and when you build a model, you have to score them. We call that analytics. Like I said, with the dirty, unorganized, unstructured, uncategorized data, it may take a very long time to get to this point, even to start this whole process. And one may say, you know, I'm going to just feed the raw data to the machine learning and just deep learning or whatever technique that you use. But time and time again, I talk to all these professional statisticians. They say the machines like clean data too. Would you rather feed a cleaned up version of your product taxonomy or some raw product descriptions? Yeah, sure, some smart AI with enough data, with enough study period, they may figure something out. But if you clean it up, it works better. And also, you're not just doing a model. What if you want to run some dashboard reporting? Are you going to show only the model numbers on your report? Or you want to be able to say that, you know what, in the fourth quarter last year, this type of TV sold better than the other type of TV. You want to say those things, then you better categorize the whole thing. So what is the left-hand side, basically? The gray part is what I call commoditized services. If you call some vendors, they'll do the data hygiene, the basic stuff. You clean up the name, address, and all this address summarization and all that. The email could be cleaned up as well. And you have to consolidate. Is hey, you know, like I said, I'm not a channel person. I touched every channel, right? You have to put it together. That means what is the link there? The name, address, email, or something that should be clean, and you have to consolidate them. Now, these are the kind of services that you just pay the vendor and they'll do it for you. There's so many vendors who could do these things. They have a fancy names like, yeah, sure, we have an ID graph solution or whatever, but basically it's a fancy name for data consolidation. What you really have to be extending your service is the light green part, right before the analytics. You have to categorize the whole thing, meaning, yeah, you have 100,000 SKUs. How do you categorize those things? I've seen some really bad categorization design for website, for example, and I've seen some apparel companies where they put category called 10% off. I said, you know what? Unless you want to give that 10% off for every product the same way every single year, please don't use that kind of stuff. You're mixing the offer type and the product category in the same thing. It will never work because you're going to change your mind next fall, right? So don't do that. Summarization, I talked about it. You got to summarize. And I'm going to talk more about this anyway. And then you can create intelligent variables. And I'm going to talk more about that too. When you have these things, I call it an analytics sandbox, or sometimes they call it analytics haven. Doesn't matter how you call it. But these are the fuel for these analytics processes. I'm going to skip this because I said a lot of them anyway. So what does a typical CDP look like? This is what you get when you pay some money to some vendor who claims that they build CDP. And you know what they typically do is that they'll survey what you have. What you have are, let's start from the left. You have a transaction history, who bought what and how much they pay for it and what time did it happen, through what channel, that type of thing. And then you have a product, of course. What they bought is very important. We call it a SKU level transaction. Not an easy thing to manage. Because you know why? Because you could have a multiple products in a one transaction, and you gotta now follow through every product that's in your shopping basket. And by the way, if you're selling home electronics product, the shopping basket could only have one or two products in it. But what if you're a retail chain? You could have about 20 different things in your one shopping basket. If you're a Costco, by the way, it could be like hundreds of products in the one shopping basket. You gotta follow through all of them. Not easy, but it's possible. Then you have a clicks and views. If you have a GA360 data, you'll see that all the time. Well, that's big. In fact, all this click data are the sources of the name big data. 20 years ago, we thought that, wow, that's like every breath you take, every move you make. How do you collect all this data? And that's a lot of data. And that's where the name big data came from. And actually, the name was made by the software companies where they can claim, you know what, we can now process that kind of a huge data. Great. But that was 20, 30 years ago. Nowadays, I don't really find any big meaning out of big data anyway. But considering how big what people have seen, bigger than say what they have actually bought, yeah, it is pretty big. But if you have identity, figure it out, and that's a different subject, but that could be in your CDP as well. Then of course, this is what you do. I use the direct marketing, email marketing, and other type of promotional channel. And then you have to connect all the responses. And in the central depository, you have to create some universal ID. Fine. But is that done? Yes, it's a lot better than not putting all this data set in all kinds of different places. It's better than that, but the job is not done. The job is done when you do this. Basically, you create a customer-centric view. Just because all the cylinders are in one place doesn't mean that you create a view about the customer. Let me make a distinction here. Let's take a very simple example of a transaction data. When you buy something, let's say that I took this phone and put it in a shopping basket and I paid for it. You know when that happened, through what channel, what they bought, you know all those things. Yeah, but is that describing that customer? The answer is absolutely not. You're describing the shopping basket. You're not describing that person. The person should be described in a different way. The person is all about what is his average spending with us? What was his life to date spending versus past 12 months spending? I'm talking about dollars. How many times did he show up? How many times did he show up in the store versus website? Or what was the days between the transactions so that I can create some kind of a cadence score? Yeah, his cadence should be 30 days, and it's been 60 days and he didn't show up yet. So let me remind him that you should come back because it's been 60 days. But that cadence score is different for everybody, doesn't it? So the point is, that's the descriptors of buyers. What kind of a product did he touch? Let's say that you're running a big retail chain. You have like 20, 30 different departments. How many departments did she touch? What was the last transaction date in each department? All those things are descriptors of that person. Not, yeah, on such and such day, she showed up and bought a bunch of things and left and she paid $120. Well, that's not bad, but believe me when I say this, when you create the view of the customers, it works much better for the reporting, segmentation, and modeling, of course. Now, the other side is a little more complicated, by the way, that you send, say, a lot of emails. And I say, you know what, if you send, say, 20 emails to that person, say, past 3 months, is that a lot? Well, that's a relative question, isn't it? Just because you send 20 emails, that doesn't mean a lot. Maybe if he clicked like every time and he bought 5 times, maybe that's not enough. Maybe you can send more things. Bottom line is, it's all about that person, isn't it? So when you convert that, I want to get to the point where it's somebody over-promoted, under-promoted, and adequately promoted. That's what we want to know. So once you create this view, and this is a very simplistic version of it, by the way, when you get into this click views and whatnot, now you have to do the same thing for 360 or some web data. and you have to convert all that to convert into personal descriptors, right? This is what I call analytics ready CDP data modeling. And basically, please don't stop here. Finish this. And by the way, when you have all these things ready, it's not so bad. And this is exactly what I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes. So let's summarize. What does CDP must be? One is it should be omnichannel. This is a multi-channel world. Don't be satisfied with the one or two channels that are key. No, let's expand the whole horizon. And you may say that, you know what, maybe some of the partners don't even share the PII, so there's no way for us to merge them into our database. Fine, we're not pursuing the perfection here. But what is the database marketing? Making the most of what you got. Well, let's put the most of the things in there first, knowing that it's not 100%. There's got to be multi-channel. Let's not give up at one or two channels. It should be connected on an individual level. And this is what I say. What is the keyword in CDP? It's not D or it's not P. People act like it's P, and then chief data officer may say, oh, data, sure, it's all about data. No, it's not. It's about the customer. The keyword in customer data platform is the customer. Everything must be connected through individuals. Otherwise, this picture, why would I put this in the center? Because you gotta put it around the person, not product, not channel, not department, not your division for sure, but the customers. Okay, number 3, clean and reliable. Well, we talked about hygiene, standardization, and all that. Yeah, you don't want to get into a situation where, yeah, these model numbers of the certain products are not consistent between online and offline. My God, I've seen that from some reputable companies as well. Well, we got to fix that first. Otherwise, you don't even know how many TVs that the person bought, how many monitors that person bought. You just don't have any idea. So you want to describe the person properly, you got to clean the data first. And up to date, you may laugh at this, but you know, a lot of CDPs are not up to date. And I'm not even asking for what we call real-time update either. But no, it should not be outdated, and it cannot be some 3-month-old data either. And I talked enough about analytics ready, but I put that in the quotation mark. The next one is about campaign ready. Campaign ready means that, I'll be giving a simple example. Let's say that a person can have like 5 email addresses. I have more than that, by the way. But there are email addresses that people use for different purposes. And when you do the campaign, all the rules that you set up that, you know what is the best email address for that guy? That rule must be intact. It should be consistent and it should be enforced. So that when you have the CDP talk to your Salesforce or whatever the system that they use, it should know that, you know what, this is the right email address. Because why? Because it didn't bounce back. He used it to buy certain things, and this is the email that he used for the highest purchase, or is it the one that is not opt out or whatever, or latest opt in. Hey, you can have any rule that you want, but the point is that should be all taken care of in the CDP environment, and it's gotta be campaign ready. Otherwise, then your life becomes harder, and you go like, hey, we spent a lot of money in CDP. How come my life is not any better? Because all these nitty-gritty things are not working properly. Not to mention that, you know what, now you want to rank everybody in your campaign, and then can you score the whole thing and rank by some score? Can you do that easily? That also means campaign ready. And this is the most important part. It should support omni-channel attribution. What that means is that with the CDP, you should be able to tell what worked. You did all kinds of things in your marketing environment, and even if it works, if you don't know what worked, then how are you going to get better? What worked is the hardest thing to do, by the way, because you don't even know what means actually. But what could mean in the CDP context? It means all the offers, all the creatives, all the versioning, all the seasonality, all the featured product should be all recorded in there. So then when the response comes back, and let me go back to the chart again. When the response comes back, this response in the yellow should be tagged with all the things that he or she was exposed to. And then you put it all together, you go like, oh, wow, this guy doesn't like, he doesn't care for all this 10% discount, but he loves free shipping, whatever. And that comes out on a personal level. Bottom line, Yeah, sure. Of course, you have to know what channel worked the best so they could properly distribute your marketing budget to proper channel and whatnot. But you also have to understand that on a personal level, what would be the most optimized offer for that person? So these are the things that the CDP must support, and that's what it should be. So I use the holistic data journey, and the holistic means is that no, it's not some one-sided, it's not some about some few channels, it's the whole thing. And from data hygiene to all the way to consolidation to model-based targeting and attribution. The attribution, by the way, if you remember the circle that I showed you, what was the last thing that you do before you create a new problem statement is to see if it worked. And one of my mentors, Lester Wonderman, used to say those things. If you call yourself a database marketer, you gotta be curious about what worked. In fact, why do we call him father of direct marketing? Because even when he was a young boy delivering groceries to New York City apartments, he figured out the correlation between the number of flights that he climbed and the tip amount that he got. He was only like, I don't know, like teenager, but he figured it out. But he carried that through 80 some years of his career, and he used to measure everything. And I say the same thing. If you don't measure your success, what good is your CDP? I mean, CDP is not just to create some amazing engine to send more emails. No, it's really about figuring out what works. So this is some long page. Let me just say the punchline first. You cannot just buy a commercial CDP solution, which is normally one size fits all, and hope to God that it answers all your questions. You got to think about, yeah, clean, fine. So do they even clean the data for you? Well, you have to make rules yourself sometimes. And the sensitivity matched login name, address, email, how tight is a match? If you're a bank, you've got to be tight. If you're a retailer, it could be medium. If you're aggressive, maybe it should be loose. It's up to you, but you gotta do that. You cannot just rely on some vendor. You know what? This is the result, and just take it. No, it has to be tweaked. Transaction data are very unique, by the way. What if you're in a subscription business? What if you're in a hotel business? What if you're in a retail business? Retail is the simplest. You take the money, you sell things. When you get into the subscription business, your transaction is not that simple. You have to think about status now. Also, the industry. Selling groceries and selling all these big ticket items are very different. Bottom line, you gotta find a way to do the exception management. Otherwise, you're trying to fit this whatever in the round peg, doesn't work. The thing that you have to remember is that you have to know, yeah, the work could be done by the vendors, but you have to know when you really want to clean it up and be able to support it. So the Sandbox benefit, I'm going to just be short about these things. Yeah, I talked about analytics readiness, and you have to create a 360 view, fine. The real benefit is, I put down 10x speed gain in anything that you do in terms of analytics. 10x is a conservative estimate. I've seen cases where, yeah, they used to build one model in a month. Two, let's just build a model so casually, let's do it one a day or one in one afternoon, by the way. It's entirely possible. So 10x is an underestimation. Now, I'm not saying that speed is always better, but let's just face it. I showed you a chart of the kind of a questions that marketers should be asking, right? And if you turn all of those things into some kind of intelligence, and what is the modeling? You turn a bunch of data into a form of an answer to the question, right? Well, you got to do more of it. You're not going to run out of questions. You're going to talk about product affinity. Just the buying habits or the loyalty scores or the churn score, or it could be about lifetime value. It could be likely to respond to certain things. It could be anything, right? But the point is, if you cannot do these things fast, you're always hampered by the speed in which you operate. So that's a bad thing. So again, I cannot overemphasize the importance of the Sandbox environment. Who's going to build it? Well, don't be shy and ask for help. That's the punchline there. Basically, you have to consider a lot of things, but let's not be bound by platform software and programming. Let's commit to that first. There are a lot of people who can help you doing this, by the way. And another thing, don't try to boil the ocean right away. Phase it out, please. You cannot do all those things at the same time. What I would suggest is that proof of concept, I'll start with the transaction data, by the way. There's the most potent and predictable and most standardized, especially when you deal with a transaction system like Magento. The output is very, very clean. So try to build a sandbox out of there, and that's a good exercise. Then move on to the email campaign history, then move on to the multi-channel attribution, and so forth. So think long-term and do one step at a time. But there's no way for me to talk about all this in one session anyway. But if I have to leave behind, you know what, don't give up just because the job is too big. You gotta phase it out. Do something. So let me get in more into details about data refinement. I probably run out of time, but I'll just give you the categorical answers about all these things. Let's start with this. I'll say if you have a choice of doing something fast, I'll start with the behavioral data, which is what I just said. Lowest hanging fruit is the transaction data. It could be the online data if that's easier. If it's easier for you to dissect your online transaction data, do that first. Then expand it to the POS data or any kind of a store data or the partner data. The movement data, lifestyle data, you could get that later. You could buy these things too. Let's not forget you could buy data and enhance your database almost overnight. What is the demographic data? Income, age, number of children, the housing size, number of rooms, or whatever. The median income of that neighborhood, that would be geodemographic. Get those things, you could move fast. And I'm not putting down the attitudinal data. That's the really hardest thing to do. Surveys and primary researches, do that on the side, please. That's more of a, how do I put it? You could use them for target definition for your models, but it's not possible to have these things attached to everybody in your database. So I'll say start with the behavioral data, expand that to the demographic or firmographic data. So I'll start there. And then, of course, when you create the evaluation, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but if you're interested, I'll send you the link of my article I wrote about these things. But basically, do not just look at the cost. Cost is at the bottom. Think about what kind of a unique and data coverage that you're getting. Let's look at 1 and 2 first. Wow, that data source is so unique and it's providing insights that I used to never get. Fine, go at it, but ask this question, is it covered for the whole database or even good part of it? It could be some mobile movement data, for example. But what if it's limited to one carrier and can only get a few? Well, is that enough? Then you got to answer that question. So the bottom line is you cannot just dump every data source that you have in your CDP. Let's evaluate this more systematically. I cannot cover the whole thing right now, so let me just leave that as a question, okay? So you got to really think about those things. And then create a data menu. But when you do this, involve your analyst. What are you trying to predict? What are you trying to do here? You want to do the time series model? Then you got to have the historical data. You're going to do the lookalike model, then you got to really clean out all your product information, what they bought and whatnot. So again, let's go back to the first chart that I showed you, the circular chart. Everything that you do, even from what to put in your database to what to clean first or what model to build first, all those things should be governed by the same question, the problem statement that you created in the beginning. You should be governed by that. So let me just leave it out there. This is all leave behind. I'm going to give you this deck to you anyway. So just look at it as a checklist. And by the way, I wrote all this down in my monthly series at week. So always look for that as well. The data menu, let me just skip that through. What are the data menu? But let's talk about that for a second. You're talking about PII. Again, CDP, the keyword is customer. You gotta have some name, address, email, even IP address. Phone number would be okay, but I wouldn't count too much on it, by the way. You gotta do those things to know what the personal history is. And by the way, if you have any kind of a member ID or some kind of a customer ID, please make that as consistent as possible. Always consolidate multiple member IDs by a person. And I've seen a lot of websites where a user can consolidate multiple emails into one. I've seen websites like that, and I think that's a very good thing, because the worst thing that could happen in CDP is that you count one person as two, and guess what happens when you do that? The average value of that customer, even if he bought a lot of things with you, the value goes down, and you don't want that. So it all comes down to this PII. And of course, it's a double-edged sword. If you don't become careful with these things, you could be sued, and you don't want to have a data breach. But that aside, this is the key to all these things. Order transaction, I talked about it. Item, we talked about it. Promotion history, talked about it. But response history, well, if you have a good order history, you could match the promotion to the order or transaction and get that too. But the point is, these are the bold-faced ones you gotta care first. If you're in a membership business, of course, customer status and all that, member status. Communication history, good to have. Call center. These days, IoT data is big as well. Or the chat data, maybe somebody talks to the chatbot. You have all those things. And if you can extract what product did he complain about, that becomes a source of the ownership data as well. So you can reach to these things and get meanings out of it. And of course, you can do the sentiment analysis based on communication and social media and all that. But social media, you may not have the PII, but as an aggregate level, it is good to know. But I doubt that any social media company will share any of that with you, by the way. By the way, one last thing is that the online behavior, open click-through, this is entirely possible. I just finished something like that with one of my large clients, and it was really exciting to know that, oh, that's when they click, or that's what they click, or this channel works better than the other for the other product. I mean, you can answer all kinds of questions with it. Now, let's talk about transaction data for a second. So when I say transaction data, I talk about the order history and whatnot, and I'm not going to bore you with all the nitty-gritty details. But let's say there's somebody's 3 transactions, you want to summarize it. This guy showed up 3 times. This is his total spending. This divided by that would be his average spending. And this is the first and last. This minus that divided by a number of transactions would be days between transactions. So all those descriptors that I was talking about earlier come out of these things. Really fantastic source of the thing. Normally, I create about 500 to 1,000 variables. If you marry this thing with the product categories, then you can create all kinds of descriptors for the individual, and that's really my bread and butter for, by the way, a lot of our future predictions. I'm gonna give you some examples of what raw data should be coming in, by the way. Let's talk about that for a second. For the merchandising, I want you to remember just 5 things. Who bought what, on what date, for how much, through what channel. Payment method would be a gravy, but yeah, you don't have to have that. You don't need the credit card number. Basically, how did he pay? Cash, COD, or Amex, Visa, MasterCard, whatever it is. That becomes predictable. But this is the simplest version of the what happened. If you're in a subscription business, I'm not going to bore you by reading all the things, but you got to think about all the statuses now. When was the last time he paid, and did he ever get dormant, all that. If you're in a hospitality business, now you have to think about multiple dates: date of the booking, date of the arrival, duration of the stay, the week of the day that he arrived. Hey, that could give you if he's a leisure traveler or the business traveler. Room class price paid, how long ago did he book before the travel date? That could also tell you if he's a business traveler or not. These things are the essential. So when you do the data menu thing that you do, think about these things, just look as a lookup. And I'm not saying that this is all inclusive either, because when I do this for my client, of course, it's a lot more extensive than this, but just start there. And then promotion data, at least you know what channel you use, where'd you get the name, what was the offer, and all that. Just keep that as long as possible, please. This will be the good start for any kind of a data exercise. And this is what I want out of the whole exercise. When is the recency? No, I just don't want the date. I want to know week since the last transaction date. That would be the recency. Week since the first transaction would be the tenure, or member sign-up date. or it could be frequency. How often, and how often in past 12 months, past 24 months, life to date, all kinds of things. I even count the returns and adjustments, by the way. Monetary, all the total dollars like that. And by the way, when I do this, I also think about net price and the discount minus the tax and shipping, so that I know the amount of discount for every single transaction. This is a key to finding out if somebody's a habitual discount seeker or the full price buyer. So these are the kind of things that come out of the whole thing. Again, I routinely create 500 to 1,000 variables out of these things, because you're going to marry that to brand or marry that to product. You may have like 30, 40 different product categories. We could have just 5, I don't know. But the point is, when you marry all these things, you could even see that, wow, this guy's really active in a food department. He never touched my apparel department. This happened quite a bit. So those are the kind of holistic pictures. So all this ORFM, I'm not saying to throw that out. All I'm saying is that this, even at a surface, is a lot more powerful and colorful than the RFM variables. And you do not have to, this is year 2022. You do not have to do the RFM all day long. You could always do these things. The categorization, let me just touch upon what I'm talking about here. When I look at the offer code, I've seen free form 500 like offers that is not organized. When you create code like this, dollar offer, discount offer, buy one, get one free. And then what if there's a condition? Put on another code called condition. You can explain what you did with less than 20 different categories. When you do these things for product, services, offers, channels, sources, whatever it is, just categorize as much as you can, then your database will shine even better. The rule is always be consistent, cover all the bases, do as much as possible. Even like business titles are very, very predictable. So let me just stop here, because we're running out of time, and external data could always buy the data anyway. The final thought is this. In the age of the ubiquitous data and AI is smart, but not that smart. The data is the fuel for these things. When you buy a nice Italian sports car, you do not want to put unrefined oil in that car, okay? You want to have a premium gas in it. It just runs better. And what we just talked about is the surface of how to clean and organize the data, so that whether it be human analyst or the AI, it just works better. And what the bottom line is this. In the age of the data, everybody's offended by the use of data anyway. So you got to humanize the data. And I really believe that gentle nudging comes from the probability score. Don't act like, oh, I know you bought these things, I'm going to offer these things. That's quite offensive, actually. So to do the gentle nudging, you have to convert all these things into models and probability scores. And to do that, you need analytics. And to do that, you need the clean data. So that's the final thought. I only have 1 minute left. Sorry about the long-winded presentation here, but we had a lot to cover in 1 hour. This is only a 90-minute presentation. So thank you for your patience, but hopefully we have some time to take some questions. Yeah, I see some chat box here.
Yeah, we have a few, but you could pick one. Sure. And as far as not running out of time, well, we'll just have to have you back.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. By the way, this is my contact information. Like I said, I wrote down everything that I said, and we have 110 articles there. So you can always search. If you don't have the membership, just contact me and I'll just find the right article for you. So please contact me when you